Hello everyone, Just Podcast TV is here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on new contents.
Iceland. That's the place I want to go the most. That's great. Cindy possessed the unaffected loveliness of a rose in full bloom. Her lustrous hair fluttered in the morning breeze, emitting an intoxicating fragrance. How could James withstand such temptation? He held Cindy's rosy cheeks with both hands and kissed her again. Soft lips came together. The warm feeling was like a drug, instantly addictive. James's heart beat faster and his breathing became heavy. His tongue touched hers and lingered. Vanessa walked over. She wrapped her arms around James and pulled him from Cindy's embrace. "Hey, James, this isn't cool. You can't forget your old loves when a new one comes along, right? It's no fair just kissing Cindy." She smiled mischievously and pressed her mouth to James, playfully biting his lip. Then Krista and Katie joined the trio, both wanting in on the fun. James wasn't sure if the scene was paradise or torture. He was the one who started it. He had to be responsible for his own actions. James passionately made out with each of the women in turn. In the end, they were satisfied, but James felt his tongue go numb. He swore to be more circumspect in the future. No one could bear such delirious pleasure. Even so, if word of his luck with women were to spread, all the men in the world would envy him to death. Krista, Vanessa, and Katie brought Cindy, the neophyte, on a tour of the yacht, pointing out the various features. James took the captain's seat and sped away on the Thames. He had already planned their route to Iceland. The river flowed from west to east before entering the North Sea. James would continue north along the coast. Finally, he would pass through the Faroe Islands to arrive at his destination in the middle of the North Atlantic, Iceland. This route was not the fastest, but James was traveling around the world in no particular hurry. He eagerly wanted to experience the beautiful scenery of the North Sea and the North Atlantic. He also wanted to make Cindy's first trip aboard the yacht memorable. On the afternoon of the third day, James's yacht passed through the mouth of the Thames and officially entered the vast North Sea. The gray sea and sky blended together, making Cindy, who had never been out on the sea before, swoon with excitement. The bone-piercingly cold winds could do nothing to damper her enthusiasm. The North Sea did not freeze over, but there were many sizable pieces of ice floating on the surface. As the yacht moved forward, there was continuous crackling sounds as the craft cut relentlessly through the frozen patches. The other three did not leave her alone on the deck. Instead, they enjoyed the beautiful scenery of the North Sea with her, despite the brutal cold. The scenery was still worth admiring. James was very strong, and he was able to withstand the extreme cold. He worried that the women might not be up to it. Fortunately, Krista was a woman with foresight. During the days she had spent in London, she had bought piles of cashmere clothing to keep her and the others warm. The beautiful women chatted on the deck nonstop without a care in the world. James felt bored for a moment, so he grabbed some gear and started fishing. James knew that their current location was known as the North Sea Fish Farm, the intersection between the warm currents of the North Atlantic and the cold currents from the North Pole. The seawater in this zone continually surged up from the bottom layer to the surface, bringing decomposing organic matter and other nutrients with it. Hence, this region was very fertile, forming a high-yield fishing area in the heart of the North Sea. There were many types of fish in the area, and many of them. Chief among them were herring, mackerel, and cod. If you were lucky, you might even encounter a large bluefin tuna. James had caught one of these beauties before, but unfortunately it had wound up in the bellies of those damn pirates. So he really hoped to get another one here. The flesh of the bluefin tuna was incomparably delicious, and it was still fresh in his memory. James focused on his task. Soon, he had something. The bell at the tail of his line began to shake violently. As expected of North Sea Fish Farm, there are so many fish here. Vanessa was the first to notice that James had something on the line. She ran over and asked, "Did you get anything?" James grinned at her and said, "Yes." He moved very quickly, deftly reeling in the line. Soon, a monster of a fish, about 3 feet long, thrashed wildly on the surface of the water. Katie, Krista, and Cindy followed Vanessa over to watch James reel in the big fish, which James had identified as a cod. Cindy was fascinated. When she saw James's fish break the surface, she cried out, "Ah, it's so big! I saw it! It's so big!" Vanessa, Krista, and Katie, who had been deep-sea fishing before, began to help. Katie went to the cabin to get a net. Cindy felt like an outsider, completely useless. Fortunately, James kept getting Cindy to join in on basic tasks, which made her feel much better. The 5 of them cooperated well, and they caught the huge cod in the net. James carried it into the cabin and measured it with a ruler. The fish was 3 feet 2 inches long, a real whopper. Because the deck was so cold, James and the others decided to hold a wine and barbecue party in the women's cabin. Vanessa was in charge of carving while Krista handled seasoning. Katie prepped and Cindy captained the grill. This had always been James's job, but he had to admit Cindy's skills were superior. James knew how to enjoy life. If he found himself idle, he wouldn't go looking for work. Seeing that the women had everything well in hand, he laid down on the sofa in the cabin and watched a movie. They roasted the fat, wide cod fillets until they were greasy. An alluring aroma filled the cabin, making everyone's mouths water. Vanessa saw James drooling in anticipation. She took a skewer of roasted cod meat and walked over to him. She waved it under his nose and purred. "Oh, James, do you want to eat it?" Looking at Vanessa's voluptuous figure, James almost could not help but say, "I want to eat you." He composed himself, nodded, and managed to croak out, "Yes." Vanessa alluringly nibbled the tip of the skewered cod. "If you want to eat it, come and get it." James choked. "What are you afraid of?" James smiled bravely and bit into the proffered fish. It was delicious, fat, and juicy. The outer layer was golden and crispy, but the inside was soft and tender. It exploded with flavor in his mouth. Again, he had to acknowledge that Cindy's barbecue skills were not only far better than his, but simply superb. Vanessa fixed him with a naughty look. He glanced sideways and saw the expressions on the other 3 women's faces change. Not in anger, but with the kind of tenderness that could melt steel. It made James feel dizzy. He quickly looked away and got up to walk back to the bridge. He feebly excused himself, saying, "Well, my beauties, I'll go and see what's happening on the sea." As soon as James left, the 4 women laughed wildly. Katie pointed in the direction of the bridge and said, "Vanessa, you are amazing. Look at you. You scared James so much that he ran away." Cindy added, "Vanessa, I almost couldn't hold it in anymore. James's expression, it was priceless." Krista nodded and said, "It seems that he's still very shy. Vanessa, didn't you say that he had a girlfriend before and that they even lived together? Why do I feel that he's way more uptight than us girls?" Vanessa nodded and said, "That's right. Our James used to have a girlfriend. I even saw her with my own eyes. I have to say that she wasn't very good looking. I really don't know why James liked her. Her personality wasn't great either." Katie replied, "Yes, that girl. She was my college classmate. She's the worst. James didn't fall in love with her. She just sort of pestered him into the relationship." Cindy beamed. "Oh, so that's what happened. I knew it. Back then I was unable to lure James with my beauty. Now I understand the difference. I didn't have a thick enough skin." Vanessa looked cheekily at Cindy and said, "Babe, I think your skin is plenty thick." "You're asking for a beating, little girl." The sound of their laughter rang from the cabin. James heard the women screeching with laughter and tearing around the cabin in mock battle. He shook his head helplessly. He picked up a bottle of 1982 Lafitte and settled into the captain's seat. He sat there drinking alone. It was a strange world. Some men were frustrated when they could not find a woman, while others were frustrated because they had found too many. Presently, Vanessa came to invite James to the fish feast, but James had grown moody and he ignored her. In the end, all 4 women came in to cajole him, but James still did not go. Vanessa finally said, "All right, I know what you're thinking. Tonight, Krista will be yours. You can make up for last time." Vanessa, what are you talking about?" Krista's face turned red from embarrassment. James, on the other hand, said calmly, "Who said I wanted that? I am a dignified gentleman." He walked back to the cabin as the bemused women looked on. The women didn't know what to make of James's strange outburst. They hoped the feast would improve his mood. Not only had they prepared all kinds of food, they had also installed colorful lights throughout the cabin. The romantic and warm atmosphere was very inviting. The 4 women surrounded James and sat down like princesses arrayed about a king. The party began in earnest. Although there were only 5 people present, the women were all multi-talented, wonderful conversationalists and game for anything. They knew how to have fun. The wild, fiery Vanessa was an excellent dancer. She performed a saucy burlesque number so charming and sexy it made James feel like his heart was going to melt. Katie performed a song with her pure, sweet voice that moved everyone to tears. Krista, usually the most mature and self-possessed of the group, surprised everyone with a fiery flamenco dance number. Finally, it was Cindy's turn. As she was a newcomer, no one yet knew her talent, and they were all looking forward to seeing what she would do. She also sang in a rich, beautiful voice that intoxicated everyone. James was dumbstruck, believing her to be the equal of any A-list singer one could name. As the performances ended, the party reached its climax. The women raised their glasses and looked at James expectantly. Krista said, "James, don't you want to say something?" Yes, I should say something." James nodded in agreement. He thought for a moment and said, "Looking around this cabin, I can't believe my good fortune. I can't believe I get to share my life with you all." He spoke earnestly, and his smile was touchingly sincere. In his eyes, the 4 of them were simply perfect, precious beyond compare. The 4 women beamed. The usually carefree Vanessa looked at James and said, "I think the 4 of us should thank you. You have given us wonderful lives. You are the brightest star in our sky." The atmosphere was very emotional. Everyone was moved to share their true feelings with each other. James had often dreamt of such closeness in the past. He had never thought that it would come true in such spectacular fashion. He was profoundly happy. They raised their glasses again and drank. They snuggled up to each other and sang along with the radio. Cindy had finally broken through the final barrier and completely integrated into James's family. On the deck, Cindy held on to the railing, slightly drunk and swaying dreamily. She shouted into the darkness, "Hey, C, listen up. You are my witness. I feel that falling in love with James is the best thing I will do in this lifetime." Vanessa followed suit, shouting, "James, I love you. I love you in this lifetime. I will still love you in the next one." Katie put her hands to her mouth, forming a megaphone, and then shouted, "James, don't even think about getting rid of me." And when it was Krista's turn, she grew shy and said, "You guys are really childish." Then she giggled and said, "But I also want to be childish today." Then she shouted at the sea, "James, you have already lived in my heart. You will live there for the rest of my life." James was lying on the deck, oblivious to the bone-piercing cold wind. His heart was full of love, but it was burning like a raging fire. Finally, everyone returned to the cabin and got ready for bed. James felt that the most important part of the night had finally come. Everyone was sleepy and ready to rest. They went to their separate berths, but James pulled Krista back. The two of them looked at each other and instantly understood each other's feelings. James led Krista toward his room. Everything was smooth sailing. James anticipated finally getting what he wanted. However, just as James impatiently hustled Krista into his quarters and was about to close the door, 3 pairs of hands pushed it back open, and 3 pairs of fiery eyes locked on the pair. "Hey, what are you guys planning to do?" Katie asked with a mischievous smile. James was caught. He grinned and said, "Didn't Vanessa say earlier that Krista would be mine tonight?" "Ah, did I say that?" Vanessa looked at James with a confused expression and declared, "No, I didn't say that." "I didn't hear it. I think you must have encountered an illusion, James," Cindy teased. Then the 3 of them squeezed into the berth. Cindy pulled Krista to the door, saying, "Don't even think about bullying Krista. We're sisters and we're all on the same team." James watched helplessly as the 3 of them took Krista away. He was so frustrated that he stomped his feet. The disappointment was crushing. He had a wild impulse to shave his head and become a monk. As they led Krista back to their cabin, Vanessa said over her shoulder, "Until you're properly married, don't even think about that kind of thing. Forget becoming a monk." James was so angry that he almost jumped into the sea.